Okay, I think we're good to get started. Eli, we're good?
We are good.
Okay, awesome. Excited to see everybody joining. This is our first Moonwell Community Call, so welcome everybody. We're planning on hosting these on a monthly basis going forward. Occasionally bringing on some guest speakers from our community and talking about all things Moonwell. Today, you're primarily going to hear from the Lunar Labs team. We are contributors to the Moonwell protocol alongside other teams like Gauntlet, Halborn, and Rome Blockchain Labs. And from our team, you'll primarily hear from myself, Lucas. I lead growth. Eli, aka Magin, who's our community manager. Luke Youngblood, which many of you know, leads product and engineering. So excited. As far as agenda, we're going to start off with Eli giving a quick governance update. Then he'll hand it off to Luke, who's going to introduce our guest speaker from Base, and they'll talk about everything Base related. And then we'll hand it back off to me. I'll introduce our second guest speaker from VectorDAO. Then we'll have a short Q&A session. These are questions that were sourced from the community before the call. And then at the very end, we'll share a QR code for a special NFT mint. So let's get things started. Eli, you want to kick us off with a governance update?
Absolutely. Thank you, Lucas. So, and thank you to the Moonwell community in attendance today. I'm Eli, or more commonly known in the Moonwell community as Majin, as Lucas mentioned. I'm going to be giving a brief update on the latest from Moonwell governance. Before I do that, I want to give a quick primer as to what Moonwell governance is. So the Moonwell governance is governed by its token holders. For Moonwell Artemis, that's the WELL token, and for Moonwell Apollo, that's the MFAM token. Voting power and governance rights are derived from these tokens and can be delegated to an ERC20 address. When one delegates their WELL tokens or MFAM tokens, they are activating the voting power of these tokens and assigning it to a specific address, whether that be their own or that of another. Governance discussion typically takes place on the Moonwell governance forum or the Moonwell Discord server. Here, the Moonwell community is encouraged to share their thoughts, ideas, feedback, and proposals with other members of the community, whether they hold governance tokens or not. Voting takes place in two locations. There's the snapshot voting portal for off-chain signal voting, and there's also the Moonwell governance portal for on-chain voting. If you want to go deeper into these mechanics of Moonwell governance, please visit the Moonwell docs, the Moonwell Gov 101 blog posts on our Medium page, or just swing by the Moonwell Discord, and either myself or one of our lovely Moonwell moderators will be happy to get you up to speed. Now that we have a little better understanding of some of the core concepts, I'd like to circle back to one of the most important aspects of governance, and that is delegation. Again, to delegate is to assign voting power to a specific address. It can also be used as a noun, though. So a delegate is someone who others are able to delegate to represent them and vote on their behalf in Moonwell governance. Delegation is an extremely important delegation is extremely important as it allows those who may not have time to vote or stay informed to still have a voice in governance. Becoming a delegate can allow members of the community to reach the proposal threshold as well, which is the required voting power needed to submit Moonwell improvement proposals, many of which are vital to the well-being and health of the protocol. If you're interested in becoming a Moonwell delegate, the process is as simple as creating a post on the delegate pitch section of the governance forum. Here you can share your name, ERC20 voting address, credentials, bio, motivation, framework for voting, etc. If you hold WELL or you hold MFAM tokens and you want to find someone to delegate to, you're also going to want to head to the delegation pitch section of the governance forum and find a delegate that aligns with you. If you end up changing your mind, you can always redelegate to a different address at any point in time. Briefly, I want to talk about one of the most prolific Moonwell delegates and contributors to the protocol, and that is Gauntlet Network. They play a crucial role in managing risk for the protocol by conducting economic simulations and on-chain analysis. They then leverage this info to recommend adjustments to market parameters such as collateral factor and borrow caps. Gauntlet submits these recommendations bi-monthly, so every 2 weeks. And so far, they've put forth 18 on-chain Moonwell improvement proposals. The next batch of which should be going live on the forum next Monday, and then up for snapshot vote or on-chain voting on Tuesday. I also wanted to briefly thank Gauntlet for keeping the Moonwell community informed during the recent USDC market turmoil. They closely monitored the situation and provided the Moonwell community with daily updates, in-depth analysis, and recommendations on the governance forum. So thank you, Gauntlet. And last thing, before I wrap up, I'd like to briefly discuss Moonbeam Ignite, which is a campaign dedicated to spark growth in the Moonbeam ecosystem. In October of last year, the Moonbeam Foundation awarded an ecosystem grant to the Moonwell community through their interim grants program. This grant, along with another grant that was awarded to Stella Swap, which is the leading DEX on Moonbeam, laid the groundwork for the Moonbeam Ignite campaign. The Moonwell and Stella Swap grants were designed to work in tandem to bolster liquidity for both wormhole wrapped and Polkadot native assets in the Moonbeam ecosystem. The idea being that increased liquidity leads to strong DeFi primitives, which enables new applications to be built and novel use cases to flourish. And that in turn brings additional liquidity into the ecosystem, and the flywheel builds momentum. As a result of the passage of this grant, the Moonwell community has successfully activated new markets for wormhole wrapped ETH, BTC, USDC, BUSD, as well as native XC/USDT or native Tether. However, unforeseen consequences of the FTX collapse in early November led Moonwell contributors Gauntlet Network, who we just mentioned, to recommend a more conservative capped launch of these new markets to avoid unnecessary risk to the Moonwell protocol and community. Due to this capped launch, the Moonwell community has managed to preserve approximately half of this ecosystem grant provided by the foundation. For this reason, the Moonwell community has decided against applying for the current round of grant funding, which you may have seen going on. Voting was live last week for Snapshot and on-chain this week. Again, the community has decided against applying for this current round and is opting to reevaluate the situation in late June ahead of the next round of funding and Moonbeam community voting. And that's everything from me. But before I hand it over to Luke and Andrew to discuss Base, I wanted to say one final thank you to the entire Moonwell community, from our regulars in the Moonwell Discord to our dedicated Moonwell ambassadors localizing content and assisting users, and to our committed delegates who represent others in governance. You all are the driving force behind Moonwell and what makes it truly exceptional. So thank you for your unwavering support and contributions. And without further ado, Luke and Andrew.
Thanks very much, Eli. I really appreciate the great introduction. And thank you, Lucas, for introducing us and kicking off the call. And thanks for the governance updates. So I have with us today a very special guest speaker who I'm very excited to introduce. He comes from Coinbase. His name is Andrew Flockhart, and he's one of the lead engineers on the Base, the new Base initiative that Coinbase is launching soon. So without further ado, welcome, Andrew. And if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself really quick to the audience.
Of course. Hey, happy to be here. And thanks so much for the warm introduction. Yeah, I'm Andrew. I work on product and engineering for Base. I've worked at Coinbase for about 5 years now, and I've been working on Base since December. So really excited to chat with you all about it.
Great. Well, I'm really excited to have you here as well. And we're going to just do a bit of a Q&A here to learn more about Base. And I think a lot of us in the community are really excited to hear about it. And so let's just jump right in. First of all, Can you provide an overview of Base and explain why Coinbase decided to incubate Base?
Yeah, absolutely. So for people who don't know, Base is a Ethereum layer 2 that we are building that's based on the OP stack. So it's its own chain, but it's leveraging all of the technology that Optimism developed for their Optimism mainnet, and that's referred to as the OP stack. Right now, Base is in testnet, and we're working hard to get to Base mainnet in the next few months. As far as like why Coinbase decided to incubate Base, it's sort of, we could almost go back to like the beginning of Coinbase, because Base is very much a continuation of the strategy that Coinbase has been walking for a long time. The sort of medium-term answer, though, is that Coinbase strategically understands that on-chain is the next online. The future of building products, not just financial products, but any digital products, very likely to be on-chain. And so we want to sort of both help push that space forward and also be able to start building more and more products online. On-chain rather. When we took a look at the sort of current ecosystem of, the first choice a developer has to make when developing Web3 products or putting their code on chain is like, which chain do I put them on, right? And just like every other developer, Coinbase developers would meet that, first decision point and kind of be stuck, right? And be like, okay, there's, these benefits to this chain, commonly, right, understood now is like, many applications shouldn't be built on L1 because of the cost and various restrictions there. And so then you have the sort of ecosystem of all the layer 2 and scaling solutions to look at. What we realized is that building and deploying our own chain gives the company like an easy answer and a Schelling point to sort of sidestep that decision and start building on chain, as well as building the infrastructure for on chain, right? So Base obviously is not just a tool for Coinbase developers; it's a tool for the entire ecosystem, including Moonwell developers, including any other dApp builders. And so it's a kind of way for us to accelerate our own work, as well as accelerate the crypto economy and the crypto ecosystem.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we've all of us in the Ethereum ecosystem and in the DeFi ecosystem have kind of experienced that pain about deciding where to build. And I think Ethereum mainnet obviously has, the most users, but it's also the most congested. And so it really has been, the development of these new layer 2 solutions like the Optimism stack that kind of enabled, it sounds like Coinbase and others to build in a, low fee, low gas environment where you can reach, the largest community possible. So it makes perfect sense to me. This is sort of a good segue into this next question. So many years ago, Coinbase published an ironically titled Secret Master Plan blog post, which outlined a vision for bringing 1 billion people into the crypto economy. How will Base play a role in helping to achieve this vision and accelerate the movement towards an open financial system?
Yeah, I love that. The Secret Master Plan, which I encourage everybody to go check out. It was a long time ago, 6 years ago, or 6 or 7 years ago. It was in 2016, which is definitely a long time ago in crypto years, but it's not that long ago. So if you haven't read it, right, Brian published the blog post Coinbase's Secret Master Plan, which is basically like 4 steps. And step 0 or step 1 is build the crypto, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, right? Step 2, build an exchange. Step 3, build an interface onto crypto. So that's the wallets, things like that. And step 4, build a flourishing dApp ecosystem, on top of all these tools that really, increases economic freedom in the world and brings the future of crypto to everybody. So Base is kind of like step 3.5 here, right? Where we're sort of going to be enabling a ton of new development in the space. What our aim is to make sure that like we're operating from these core principles of decentralization, building in the open, building for all of crypto, not just for Coinbase. So we want to eschew any type of like walled garden approaches, even though in the short term that might be sort of more profit maximizing, but knowing that in the long term we're all growing this giant pie of the crypto economy. And so building together, building in the open, building decentralized are super important. I'm not sure I answered all parts of that question, Luke. So, but happy to like dive into more detail or go whichever way you think would be best.
No, that's great. And honestly, I think we've seen through the, all the failures of last year where we've seen multiple exchanges and centralized, players in the space collapse and become basically insolvent. I think going from this, off-chain, centralized exchange world to an on-chain world where everything is visible on-chain is going to be a huge unlock, because now, it's no longer, trust us. It's actually, you can look at the data on chain and you can verify that the funds are there, right? And I think this is going to unlock new levels of trust minimization and really enable people to have a better experience with crypto. So really excited about this potential of moving more and more Coinbase services from this off-chain world to the on-chain world. And also excited about all the work you guys are doing in terms of usability and just improving the experience for people, because I think that's been a core Coinbase benefit, is that just making it easy to use.
Yeah. I'll maybe interject there and say
Sure.
there's kind of like two elements of making it easier to use, right? Coinbase's DNA with crypto for a long time has been make crypto really easy to use for regular folks, right? Like this is the app that you should probably be telling your uncle if they ask about crypto where to get started, and that's going to continue, right? We want to make Base feel like a very easy way, not a sort of like complicated new protocol that someone has to learn just to use the latest thing, but a way that they can very, very easily, without friction, perhaps eventually without even knowing exactly, the chain specifics, and people just get the value that crypto can provide from that. So that sort of, probably makes sense to people who have seen Coinbase's product work in the past. We're sort of like following that same pattern. The other element, though, is that Base is a developer product, right? So Base and a few of the other things that Coinbase is shipping these days, you might have seen Wallet as a Service recently. We're starting to build for developers, right? And trying to enable, more than just Coinbase developers again, right? Anybody building in Web3 to have an easier, more ergonomic, experience, right? So we're hoping that Base can also become, just a great place to build, period. Even if you don't care about the Coinbase Association or anything like that, we're aiming to, be able to bring the best technology, the most ergonomic sort of things for developers.
That's awesome. And yeah, this is actually, one of the key reasons why we're so excited about Base in the Moonwell community, is that making it easier to use is going to be a huge unlock and bring a lot of additional users. But I guess, I've seen some of the new services you guys are building, like the Wallet as a Service that you mentioned. Many people may not know, but in the Coinbase retail app now, there's a Web3 tab in there, and you can actually access almost every dApp in all of the Ethereum ecosystems and EVM ecosystems through the native Coinbase app without having to set up like a seed phrase. It uses a multi-party computation behind the scenes, as I understand it. Can you talk a little bit more about how this is going to help bring your customer base into the broader Web3 ecosystem, and how these tools will help it, make Base more successful?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll sort of start with is kind of like how we expect Coinbase to leverage Base, right? And especially in our product offering. So the sort of like first step is that any products that Coinbase has today that are like network aware should be network aware of Base once we hit mainnet, right? And Base should be a sort of like first class, network that people want to use their retail dApp wallet with, like you mentioned, send receive on, all this standard things that you might expect Coinbase products today to do. So that's sort of like the table stakes that we'll launch with Base. Then there's going to be a whole suite of upcoming products that we want to be able to build that start as an on-chain product, right? And start, really building out the new wave of Coinbase products that start on chain, that start with Base as default, right? So Base as default is sort of like becoming part of the product strategy to be able to build these new experiences for folks. So that's kind of like how Coinbase will, build. What we're hoping, again, like I mentioned, right, is that the more things we build, the easier users are going to be able to come online and start using Base. That should be sort of like flywheel generating for other developers in the ecosystem, right? There should be more people transacting on chain, more people looking for things that they can do on chain, more dApps to use, right? So this should, be a great boon for developers who decide to build on Base. Is Coinbase will be sort of like bringing the masses in, right, with all the great products that we're going to build.
Amazing. That's awesome. So let's jump into some more technical questions. I think our audience also wants to hear a lot about the tech behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the Optimism OP stack and Bedrock, and what were the primary reasons for choosing Optimism's OP stack as the foundation for Base?
Yeah.
And how does that contribute to the long-term success of the Base ecosystem and the developer community?
Yeah. It's kind of like the most exciting part about all of this is the collaboration with Optimism and the OP stack. So like I mentioned at the beginning, the way that Optimism has built their L2 is they didn't just build their L2 and say, great, this is the one, everybody like come use it, right? They firmly believe that we're, going to be in a multi-chain world, and we'll get to later. They actually believe a super chain world is what we'll enter into. In order to enable that, they want it to be, super easy for everybody to spin up their own chain. And so the OP stack is an MIT open source, MIT licensed open source sort of toolkit for running your own chain. And that's the stack that Base uses. That's the stack that Optimism mainnet uses. And there are several other, projects that are looking to use that. So there's two kind of like threads to go down. Maybe the first is why did we choose the OP stack? It's really so there's like a kind of cute backstory, which is that Coinbase had been working on scaling Ethereum, right, and getting involved, knowing that scaling Ethereum, regardless of whatever layer 2, solution is going to be chosen in the end, scaling Ethereum is like a basic way that we all understand is needed to, scale the crypto economy. And so through that work on scaling Ethereum, and particularly through working on proto-dank sharding EIP 4844, it's basically a data availability upgrade to Ethereum. That's when, Coinbase started bumping shoulders with the other folks working on that, happened to be Optimism, right? So at the very genesis, there was like, hey, we should sort of like be building, the public goods that will, power the next wave of the crypto economy. And then that sort of, continued into understanding that like, hey, the values alignment is just really there from the ground up between Coinbase and Optimism in terms of like, let's build in the open, let's build, for the greater ecosystem, eschew the walled garden approach. We all win more if we win together. And Optimism had been, pioneering that as their strategy, for their L2, and the OP stack is kind of how they're doing that, right? So Bedrock, we can now transition to the like very awesome technical aspects of this. So Bedrock is the sort of current release of the OP stack that Optimism has in their testnet. That's what Base testnet is running. And both of us are planning, to bring Bedrock to mainnet in the coming months and weeks. The kind of best part about, leveraging the OP stack is what it means is that any work we do, if we find an improvement to sort of, pick your, piece, like how fees are calculated or how gas works or, speed or throughput, reliability, anything like this, you kind of automatically can benefit anyone else running the OP stack, right? So, I mean, this is like the standard open source, kind of benefit of like, hey, we'll all improve this thing together. It's really, really great, for small teams, who are trying to really, move fast, but with like, bedrock, rock solid foundations. In particular, Coinbase is excited to like help push the decentralization aspects of the Bedrock, release and of the OP stack. As I mentioned before, decentralization is super, super important as a sort of principle, and helping accelerate the way that these L2s can become fully decentralized is super important.
Awesome. And that's actually a good segue into the super chain, because I think a lot of us are really interested in understanding a little bit more about how does Optimism and Coinbase together and the broader open source community that they're contributing to the OP stack, how do we decentralize that? Because the sequencer is relatively centralized initially, but we want to get to this vision where we have multiple rollups, all participating in a super chain. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So these are related but distinct. Like, so first I'll just talk, because we mentioned it, the decentralization roadmap. So yeah, you're correct. Base at launch, right, will not be fully decentralized. We'll be running the only sequencer, right? And we'll be working, it's the same way Optimism mainnet runs. We are working with them to, in the order of like the next year-ish, be able to successively hit further and further decentralization milestones. One that's sort of like near at hand is permissionless output proposals. That means that not only Coinbase can submit output proposals back onto L1, anybody could do that, right? And as we go, the next steps are like, this gets pretty technical, but like fault proofs are an essential part of a functioning decentralized L2. We need to get a fault proof implementation. Then we need to get multiple fault-proof implementations. Eventually, this lets us decentralize the sequencer network and have Base and Optimism and any other OP stack network be truly fully decentralized, right? Like we should end up in a world where if Coinbase goes away for whatever reason, Base doesn't lose a beat. There's a decentralized network, supporting all the great dApps and users. So we're working really hard with Optimism to get there. The second thread you mentioned, which is extremely cool, and we probably won't be able to cover in all the depth it deserves, is the superchain. So highly recommend anyone that's interested, go check out the Optimism superchain docs. Really, really great. But at a high level, what the idea is, because we're all using the OP stack, we will have the same sort of protocols and standards around things like sequencing, bridging, cross-chain message passing that will enable things that are really, really hard to do if you don't have that. And in particular for like, UX, right? So right now users have to like know what chain they're on and they have to go configure it and their wallet has to be aware. And it's like a very, integral part of your on-chain experience right now. Through the superchain ideas and the superchain technology, we should eventually be able to have any of the chains in, the OP stack superchain be sort of like interoperable under the scenes, behind the scenes for users, where your Moonwell, activities may leverage, balances on different chains or may do, liquidations on different chains without the user needing to know exactly, that's happening. And so that should unlock, the true Ethereum scaling vision, where not only are your transactions cheap and faster than on L1, but it doesn't feel like this weird world where you have to like go to a different chain and do your things there, but instead you're just operating on chain, very much as people just get online. They don't go and configure their browser to like, oh, I'm joining a video call, better select UDP, that all of that is abstracted, right? And so that's kind of like the vision of the super chain, and one of the great reasons why OP Stack, is how we're going to get there.
We're super excited for the super chain in the community. I know we're running up on time, so I just want to give you one final question. Where should other developers that want to build on Base go to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So testnet is live. You can go to docs.base.org to figure out, how to deploy your dApp there. Or if you don't know how to deploy a dApp, there's a great sort of tutorial section there. You can meet us on Discord. So base.org/Discord. You should follow our Twitter at buildonbase. All of those are linked from base.org if you can't remember them. But yeah, we're super excited to be engaged with the Moonwell community, the entire development community. So come build with us. Base is for builders.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today, Andrew. Really appreciate all your contributions to the Base ecosystem and really excited to be building on Base alongside you. So yeah, thanks so much for joining.
Awesome. Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity and yeah, take care.
So I want to just give a few updates to the community on sort of what Base means to the Moonwell community. This will just take a few minutes, but first of all, for those of us that started in the Polkadot ecosystem and on Moonbeam, we've always been really passionate about the Moonbeam connected contracts vision, right? And interoperability, as people in .sama know, is key to what makes Polkadot great. and Kusama great, right? All of the parachains can interoperate with each other. They can pass messages to each other, and they can pass value to each other. And Moonbeam has been the gateway into the Polkadot ecosystem for the rest of Ethereum and for the rest of the EVM ecosystem, right? And so in the Moonwell community, we've always been very passionate about connecting the best of Ethereum DeFi into the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystems. And I hope that you're starting to see the vision come together for what Base is going to be. And Base represents this unique opportunity to basically connect the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystems, all the parachains, into the rest of Ethereum in a way that just wasn't possible before. There are some really interesting opportunities there. For example, Coinbase has 110 million retail users. Even in the depths of the bear market, 8.5 million monthly active users. Now, if just 10% of those users try the Web3 tab in the Coinbase retail app, or try the MPC wallet where you don't have to back up your seed phrase, that's actually twice the number of monthly active users in all of DeFi on all the Ethereum networks. So this is a really big opportunity to basically, double the population of DeFi users overnight, and also, long-term, reach the next billion users in a much more easy to use experience. So it's a great opportunity for Polkadot and Kusama to basically connect all of the great parachain use cases that are just starting to form to this world of Ethereum, DeFi, and layer 2. And given that, you might ask, how will Moonwell's deployment on Base be managed? So as you know, Well is the governance token for all of Moonwell, and that won't change. So you'll still be able to vote on governance using your Well tokens. But what that means is that as a community, we need to build a way to connect governance that you use today to the Base deployment. And so you can look for contributions from our team and from other contributors in the coming months to help build that out. So eventually we'll be able to fully govern the Base deployment through the same governance tools you use today. I'm sure that governance tools will improve over time as many community contributors and open source contributors improve them. And so as part of that, you may have noticed, if you pay attention to the governance forums, there's a really cool governance forum post up right now from Cool Horse Girl, and a snapshot voting proposal asking if we want, as a community, to ratify the deployment on Base. And so I would encourage you, if you'd like to get involved and have your voice and your opinion heard, go to the governance forums, reply to the forum thread, share your thoughts and opinions, and also vote on the snapshot vote. Let us know as a community if you're in favor of deploying on Base or if you're opposed to it, and let us know the reasons why you like it or why you don't like it. Let's talk about it as a community, and would encourage you to come to the forum, post there and vote on the snapshot vote. I really want to have as much participation as we can, because that's the way everyone gets their voice heard. So with that, I want to kind of turn it over to the next part of our presentation. I want to thank Andrew for his time today and for the great answers to all the questions. I want to introduce Lucas again, and also Sean Nemetz from VectorDAO, who are going to share. VectorDAO is another contributor to Moonwell, and they're going to share some of the work they're doing in this space. It's really awesome. So thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Great update on Base. As you hear, there's a lot of exciting things going on. Our next guest speaker is Sean from VectorDAO. Sean, you want to take a minute and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about VectorDAO?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Lucas. First of all, shout out to everyone here. It's so encouraging to see the community involvement with Moonwell. I'm a brand strategist and designer, and I'm part of the VectorDAO community, which is really a community that meets at the intersection of crypto and brand. And brand is a broad term there. We can help with brand strategy, verbal or visual identity, website, product. We're looking to contribute to Web3 by helping connect the dots and communicate the value, communicate, what things do, and make things more accessible to more people.
Awesome, thank you. So in a few of our interactions, I often hear you say, where they zig, we zag. And when we start thinking about what Moonwell on base could be and the greater Moonwell community that's going to come in with hopefully deployment on base, can you tell us what you mean when you talk about where they zig and they zag and what that actually means to Moonwell and the community?
Yeah. So, as a contributor to Moonwell, helping out with brand, branding is known in some ways as the art of differentiation. And it's about how do you stand out, because there are many others trying to do similar things out there. And so part of, digging into the Moonwell mission and vision and what we want to accomplish and taking a step back is seeing what others are doing, what the competition is doing, and finding out where they're going and how we're different. And so where they're zigging, that we feel like, hey, you know what, we actually want to do this differently, maybe even the exact opposite, we're going to zag. And that's how I think we can build a really tight and strong community. And that's likely a lot of the community you have likes what you do differently than the competitors. So that can come out in a variety of ways: how we speak, how we look, how we feel, how it functions, and who we are ultimately.
Awesome. So with that, like what are some of the things? I know you guys have done some amazing things as far as reaching out to potential new users, like Coinbase users, as well as reaching out to Moonwell community users and getting feedback. What are you seeing, and what do you think that could translate to? Sure.
Yeah. Well, what was exciting to hear Andrew share earlier, and just to see how Coinbase and Moonwell have a lot in common, in terms of the mission and how we want to make these tools accessible to more people. So, one thing that we've done in the work together on the brand is invite users that would be kind of resemble a typical Coinbase user, or maybe a more novice crypto user, just to see how they figure out the app and how that works. And so we're finding areas that we can improve as we want to get closer and closer to being the easiest to use lending protocol. And so some things that we found there are just, it's whether it's with art, music, building a business, sometimes you're just so close to things you can't see the bigger picture. And so really a big part of what we're doing together is taking a step back and looking at everything. And having people come in and test is a great way to do that, because they're able to see things that those of us who've been working so closely on it weren't able to see before.
Awesome. And I know that when we first started talking to you, can you share maybe with the community? I know I was anxious when we started talking about brand. Do you see the Moonwell brand, like the name changing, or like what can the community, kind of prepare for, or just be aware as far as what's coming?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the short answer is the same but more, or the same but better. And I think really what we've done is by taking that step back and re-examining what the mission of Moonwell is, we're able to make sure we're looking at the right wall before we move forward. So to specifically answer the question, are we changing the name and everything about Moonwell? No. We're going to be still Moonwell, but we're going to continue to build on top of that and strengthen the foundation. And ultimately, our aim is to make this easier and more accessible to more people.
Awesome. I know when you shared that with us, it was a sign of relief for myself as well, because we're all very committed to the Moonwell community. One last question here, and I don't know to what extent. What about on the app side? So we're talking about the brand, right? And how brand builds trust. And like you said, where the competitors might be zigging, we could zag and actually position the brand and the product. what are you seeing on the app side? Are there any opportunities there? We heard Luke and Andrew talk about making Web3 easier for people to use. How does the brand of Moonwell and also the app piece kind of come together?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a difficult question to answer, fully. But what I can say is aligning everything together. That's what the brand is all about. So when when we talk about the brand being about, we want to make this easier and more accessible to people, then we have to be doing things like having users test and get feedback to see, is it in fact easier to use, and then optimizing the app to make it do that. So yeah, even some of the things that Andrew mentioned were, maybe people aren't even cognizant of the chain they're using or kind of like what's going on in the background. And that is actually, in my opinion, a good thing a lot of times when we can make it so accessible that people don't have to worry about all these micro decisions and just everything going on in the background, all of those details. So what can I say about the app is that we're looking to make this thing more streamlined, more in line with our mission, which really coincides with Coinbase, to make this accessible to a larger portion of the world.
Awesome. Yeah, I know in a couple of our conversations together, sometimes I've expressed CeFi in the front, DeFi in the back. And we've talked about how not only from a brand, but from a product and an app perspective, DeFi and Web3 has done such a great job as far as building novel and new products. But one thing that they have forgot about is like the user experience and actually making it super easy for people to use, right? So sometimes you might hear me say CeFi in the front, DeFi in the back. And all that means to me personally is, why do we make things so complicated for users to be able to use? We don't have to show all the tech to be able to capture that adoption and everything that is going to come not only with Base, but with Web3 growing together. We do need to think about how do we actually make it easy? Is my wife able to use this, or can I actually show my parents how to use this? And without me walking them through it, how do we do that? And again, to kind of wrap it up, you guys are doing great work. I'm looking forward to, and I'm sure the community is as well, to see what that actually means on the brand side and on the app side. But I think there's a great opportunity here at this phase of Moonwell to actually be able to build on the foundation that we've had built over the past year. So thank you, Sean. Appreciate you joining. We're gonna move on to our next section here. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Awesome. So the next piece we're going to move over to, if we could just share a few of the questions that came in from the community. So prior to today's community call, there was questions that were sourced from the community. So these are not live questions. They were submitted over the past week. We chose a few of the questions that we weren't sure if they were going to get addressed in today's call. I see one already has, but let's start off with the first one. So one of the first questions was, what measures does Moonwell have in place to ensure the security of user funds and prevent hacks or exploits? And does the team continuously improve these measures to stay ahead of potential security threats? The piece here that I think is really important for everybody to understand, I always think about security being twofold. There's things that there's security measures with Moonwell, like internal things, and there's external things. So let me briefly talk about the external. External could be a bridge, or it looks like somebody's drawing on the screen. Interesting. I see that button as well, but apologies. So external, a bridge, or the ecosystem you're building on. There's not much that we as a community could do to manage those pieces. So what we tend to focus on are the internal things. So there's a few pieces there. One, bug bounties. Bug bounties might seem like a trivial thing, but they're super important. And the reason for that is, as hackers or white hacks find different kind of exploits or vulnerabilities in a protocol, they need to have a way to securely not only submit those things, but also get compensated for their work. And a lot of times when you see projects getting exploited, they either don't have a bug bounty program, or the compensation for somebody that finds an exploit is so small that the incentives aren't there for them to actually go through a secure channel. So you might hear about bug bounty and might not think it's a big deal. It's actually a really big deal, and it's a foundational piece that's super easy to set up, but is needed to incentivize white hacks to be able to actually submit stuff. So that's one. Two, when it comes to the contract and the code, one thing we do, one of our contributors is Halborn. They're an audit firm. Any change to Moonwell contracts, no matter how small, get audited and rechecked. So these are re-audits on the contracts that you see. On top of that, Halborn provides real life notifications about usages on the platform, and different team members could get different alerts when something is happening to be able to know in real time, oh, there's, utilization has significantly increased or decreased and large movements of funds. And the last one, which Eli gave a big shout out, and we see Jake from the Gauntlet team on the call today. Gauntlet is so important when it comes to managing risk on a protocol. They're constantly on a weekly and a bi-weekly basis running different analysis, looking at the movements of funds and how the community is actually using Moonwell to be able to adjust different parameters to make it safe for the community. The other thing that Gauntlet did a few months ago, they proposed and had a snapshot vote on the asset listing framework, which the community should be following to support new assets, which kind of leads me to my second question here. There's a question around which will be the next assets, including assets from Polkadot and Kusama parachain supported on Moonwell. With this snapshot vote and this asset listing framework, Gauntlet has actually introduced to the community how and what is needed to safely add new assets. So that could be anything from Chainlink price feeds or liquidity on the DEX side to ensure assets that are added to Moonwell are safe for the community to use. On top of that, it's really important to note that there's been a ton of tooling that's been built out where the community following those asset listing frameworks could actually submit and propose. And when I say submit and propose, on chain actually launch new markets. So as an example, one of the last markets to launch was XC USDT. It's the native USDT deployment on Polkadot and Moonbeam. Stella Swap, which is another contributor to the Moonwell protocol, was able to do that async by themselves without talking to anybody. They followed the asset listing framework. They knew that there was enough liquidity on their DEX conveniently, and they actually submitted the on-chain proposal to get that market added. And then what you saw was following that, Gauntlet started adjusting the parameter factors and slowly ramping up things like collateral factor to make it safe as an asset on Moonwell. And then the third question we have here is, how will base onboarding affect your already devoted users? I think Luke did a great job in explaining. I could talk about this a little bit differently from maybe a less technical perspective, but the huge opportunity here is Moonwell is not changing. What you do today on Moonriver, on Moonbeam, you'll continue to be able to do. But what the base deployment will allow the Moonwell community to do is have exposure to additional assets that they might not use or might not feel comfortable using on Ethereum mainnet. So you have that extension from Moonriver or Moonbeam to base. But at the same time, the huge opportunity, all those users that are going to come in and use Moonwell on base are now going to get exposed not only to Moonbeam and Moonriver, but Polkadot, Kusama, and the Dotsama ecosystem. So when you look today at the DeFi landscape, there isn't many places that like Dot is either swapped on DEXs, either on ETH mainnet or from a lending and borrowing perspective, although Dot is a huge asset, and the amount of Coinbase users, I believe it's a top 10 by volume, last I checked, traded asset on Coinbase. Those users are now going to have other things that they could do with their Dot that today they can't. And they're going to get introduced into Moonbeam and into the greater Polkadot ecosystem. So we do see like this migration and flow of users from Ethereum through Moonbeam using Moonwell into the greater Polkadot ecosystem. So I hope everybody is excited or just as excited as we are to see that growth. That's it for Q&A. The last piece that we promised at the beginning of the call, if we could just go to the next slide. There's a QR code for a mint. There's a few reminders here. So the last one for anybody on the call that is excited to mint their NFT, make sure to capture the one on the bottom. There's a few other QR codes here. So one thing we want to remind everybody is the base deployment vote from Horse Girl is live. And if you scan that first QR code, it's going to take you directly to the vote. And with your WELL tokens, you could actually vote for, against it, or abstain. The second QR code that you see here is delegation of your WELL tokens. Eli covered this at the beginning of the call. Super important. If you want to participate in governance, you have to at least delegate to yourself. Once you delegate to yourself, then you're going to be eligible for any new or future votes to be able to participate. If you're just holding WELL and you haven't delegated to yourself, you're not going to be able to vote when the next proposal comes live. So please go there. It's super important. That's how the protocol grows as far as engagement. Make sure to delegate tokens to yourself. If you have tokens in the safety module, they're already delegated to yourself, so you don't have to worry about that. These are tokens that you hold outside of the safety module. And then from a community perspective, please grow, help us grow our community. That third QR code is to join our Discord channel. So please join there. And then lastly, your free NFT mint for participating in the first Moonwell Community Call. To close things out, thank you so much. There's a ton of people on the call. We're going to be doing this on a monthly basis to continue to build our relationship with the Moonwell community and bring in guest speakers, both from the community, different contributors, so that you guys get the most important information available as we continue to grow Moonwell. So I hope everybody enjoys their weekend. Thank you for my team, for Eli, all the hard work that he put into making this call happen. It looks simple, but it's a ton of work. Luke, thank you for your leadership and all the great stuff to come on base. So enjoy your weekend, and thanks again for joining.